A good Thursday morning to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here at 10:30 for your extended weather forecast on 13 WMAZ Plus. Getting a better and better view of what's going to occur for the first part of your weekend and for the closing portions of it now that we have most of it in view of our short range models. So we'll go over what we're seeing in terms of severe weather probabilities, some showers and storms, something we haven't really talked about as of recently. It's just been this summer-like stretch where activity pops up during the warmest portion of the day, each and every day. And we're still going to have kind of that theme with this forecast, but we have some organization along with these rain and storm chances. So today will be one last mostly dry day. Not saying that we're going to go the entirety of today without seeing any rain chances. I do believe that some areas are going to catch a light shower or a drizzle, but showers and storms looking more and more likely for Friday and Saturday. And then as we head into next week, the big headline will be some below average temperatures for a change. Highs down into the upper 70s, below the 80-degree mark for the first time in some stretch. So as we approach the midday hour this Thursday, you can see mostly clear skies, lots of sunshine across all four of our sky cams. We have some clouds in the picture, but they do look to be higher up in the sky, not necessarily blocking that sunlight whatsoever. But you can get your spots of shade. It looks like we're getting some clouds blocking the sun in downtown Macon, but sunny skies at the Georgia National Fairgrounds, down in Warner Robins at CGTC, and then also down in Lawrence County in Dublin, a few thin clouds out there. So nothing that's producing any rain, but we will see more and more clouds in the forecast heading into the afternoon hours later on today. Temperature-wise, low half of the 70s, some areas even exceeding that in the upper half of the 70s. We have a 77 in Warner Robins, 75 up in Macon, along with Cochran at 75 degrees. Many areas like Dublin, Eastman, all the way up our eastern counties, sitting at around 72 or 73 degrees. Eastman, the coolest temperature currently at 70 degrees flat, 71 in Monticello, and then some areas down in our southern corridor are hovering in the mid-70s, 74 and 75 in McRae and Rochelle. Big picture view across this side of the country, 65 over in Arkansas, 64 in Dallas. All these areas over here are a little bit later to getting the sun as opposed to areas on the eastern time zone. But there also is some active weather out in those portions of the country. So you may notice some temperatures in the 60s across states like Arkansas, Mississippi, into Louisiana in light of some rain-cooled air. The warmest temperatures remain 78 in Jacksonville, Orlando, and Panama City, along with Laredo, and then a 79 over in Houston. Warner Robins not too far off that mark at 77 degrees currently. But once again, areas over to the west, they got a bit of a later start to the day because they are one time zone behind, got a later sunrise than we did. How about your dew points? We can continue to see them fluctuating between the low to mid to upper 60s. That's where your dew point temperatures do remain, so plenty of light green color on this map, and maybe some occasional very isolated patches of that dark green, that muggy air that you can wear, but not seeing an increase really necessarily over to the west or over to the east. It looks like virtually everyone is around the same threshold for moisture content. We have seen a bit of a pickup in the winds, and they will be occasionally breezy up to 15 miles per hour throughout today. So paired up with some mostly cloudy to partly cloudy skies and some warm temperatures, this breeze ought to feel pretty nice, but a little bit of a break from the humidity and the warm temperatures that we do have in store. 8 to 9 miles per hour right now. That's going to be your sustained winds, and that blue color will continue to be a factor all on this wind and wind gust map throughout today. So hour by hour, you will notice the typical warming trend that we've seen throughout the last couple of days into the low 80s by 1 and 2 p.m. But then you'll notice that we kind of stop at that 84-degree mark a little bit before we typically hit that high temperature. That's because I think more cloud cover is going to approach from the west, and that's going to lead to kind of a cap off, and we're not going to really allow for those temperatures to rise up into the upper portion of the mid-80s, maybe even the upper 80s, or flirt with 90 degrees. 84 is where our Meteogram has us topping off for today, and I think we have a pretty similar high temperature on the today graphic in just 1 second. Here's your satellite and radar pictures. Some light showers and sprinkles up in Jasper and Putnam counties, maybe very isolated depending on where you do live, so small that the radar's not even picking them up. But we do see that cloud cover moving in from the west, and that will continue to build into our forecast, block your image of the sunlight a little bit, but overall you'll still get your occasional breaks in that cloud cover for some nice and partly cloudy skies. Just to the north of us, now moving into the northeast corner of the state of Georgia, mainly north of I-85, we see a good cluster of some showers up there. They moved through the metro Atlanta area earlier this morning. We've seen our fair share of sprinkles pop up here and there the farther north and northwest that you live, but nothing really approaching from the west besides that cloud cover back into Alabama and Mississippi. But when you take a look at the surface map, you can see that there is a good cluster of some showers, even some probably low-end thunderstorms that were back in Louisiana, Arkansas, into Mississippi. Those are continuing to fizzle out as they make their way eastward. And this is all courtesy of those outflow boundaries. So kind of that line of gusty winds that goes out a little bit ahead of the actual frontal boundaries themselves. But a good bit to talk about with this surface map. We now see two established low pressure centers, one over on the border of Nebraska and Iowa and one up into north central Illinois. This has the most immediate impact, and this is going to be a cold front impacting many areas of the Ohio Valley region and then stretching into some portions of the deep south. But this front right here is not going to make its way all the way through central Georgia like we were talking about yesterday. That's actually going to be this front that is trailing just slightly behind. This one that you see right here that is just starting to actually kind of kick into motion and transition more from a stationary boundary to an actual cold front. That will continue to push a little bit over towards the east, but kind of dissolve and dissipate. It's not going to really hold its structure together as it treks into the southeast. But however, this trailing cold front will have impacts for our forecasts going into your Friday and Saturday. And ahead of these boundaries, an important thing to remember, there's a lot of lift, and that's one thing that's going to be a key ingredient for sparking up some more active weather in our forecasts. So let's go over the numbers first. Yesterday's Almanac, 86 was our high temperature, got down to a number of 58 yesterday morning. So once again, above average for both our high and low temperatures. Still not getting anywhere close to these records. The high temperature more so, about 8 degrees shy of the record. Nothing in the way of rain, and that puts us just under 2.5 inches of where we should be this time of year in terms of rainfall. The good news is we look to put a pretty good dent in that over the course of Friday and Saturday, but we'll get to that in just one second. Sunrise yesterday, 6:48 in the morning, and the sunset was at 8:16 yesterday evening. Continuing to watch those numbers get a little bit earlier and a little bit later. But we did wrap up the month of April yesterday. We are kicking off May 1st today. Hard to believe it is the 5th month of 2025 so far. And April now does mark our second consecutive month where we did go above the average threshold of how much rain we typically receive throughout the month of April all time. It wasn't very much, and we just beat March by a little over 1/10 of an inch, but about 1/2 inch over where we should be in terms of rainfall for April. And honestly, we really got a lot of that with that one severe weather system that stalled, and it gave us about 2 consecutive days of rain. It was on and off, of course, but we did get totals that were up to about 4, maybe even 5 inches in some spots. And rain was pretty scattered and hard to come by for the rest of April, which kind of makes sense. We did a breakout last week about April actually being one of the drier months on the calendar year, as opposed to what you may think. Okay, April's right in the middle of the severe weather season. We should have a lot of rainfall that continues to sprout just about every couple of days. But April, it was pretty hard to come by those severe weather systems after we got through the first or the second week or so. But nonetheless, we're looking for some larger numbers because January and February were definitely a lot drier. We were looking at about an inch and a half below our average for January and nearly 2 inches below average for the month of February. But all in all, when you take all these values and add them up and subtract them together, almost 2.5 inches below average, like I just showed you on that almanac. But now as we kickstart May, we look to get above that average number for rainfall very early in the month with this rain chances and these storm chances that also in turn have heavy pockets of rain. That will happen on the 2nd and the 3rd days of the month. So probably going to start out that May category with a green box just like we have for March and April. So your forecast for your Thursday, more clouds in the picture this afternoon, not going to really inhibit that warm up that we were thinking as of yesterday. I had a forecasted high of 87. We hit 86 here in Macon, but I do believe we'll climb to a high temperature of 85. So just 1 degree higher than what we just showed you on the Meteogram. but mainly overnight rain tonight. That's going to be the difference between today and the last couple of days when scattered showers and sprinkles have sprouted up during that warmest portion of the day. It will still be warm, and I'm not ruling out that you may see a very minuscule and a very localized light shower or drizzle. However, I think the best chance at seeing some rain, if you are hoping on some today, will be when you're fast asleep. And that's going to be the first indication of this pattern change we're talking about. So let's flash forward future view to show you what I'm talking about. Still partly cloudy to mostly cloudy skies this afternoon. Some gaps in there to still contribute to that warm up into the mid 80s. And then once we go into Thursday this evening at 9 p.m., seeing a very broken line of showers and thunderstorms over to our west, to the north of us. That's just kind of the shape of the first leading boundary, that first cold front I was talking about that will be pushing in, but eventually will lose its steam. And all of this is expected to fizzle out as it makes its way into central Georgia. Even though we have the moisture content, even though we will get fairly warm today, not going to quite get as warm as we could, and the temperatures will begin to cool down by the time all of this rain does make its way in. But you could see maybe a steady shower. I wouldn't even throw it out of the realm of possibility that you might get awoken by 1 or 2 rumbles of thunder. Not looking at anything very organized whatsoever, but some overnight rain chances. And the consensus I've seen and the good agreement I've seen on Future View so far this morning is that it may be the farther north that you live. It's all just going to depend on what kind of environment is available as that broken line of rain does push through. But that will start to fizzle out, and we are going to be dry for the first half of your Friday, it looks like. But once we get into the noon hour, temperatures are continuing to warm. We still have that moisture in the atmosphere. That's when we look at activity to kind of get going again, going to start to flare up. This is 5 p.m. on Friday, and reds and some oranges in here, so still looking at the possibility of some storms, let alone some showers that will be very scattered in nature throughout the late afternoon and evening hours on Friday. As of the latest run, it's not hinting at much coverage whatsoever by 7 p.m. Don't go buying this. Once again, don't get too locked in on this individual model run. We could see activity a little more widespread, like I was showing you on Future View if you caught the morning show this morning. And then going into the nighttime hours, it still looks like not much activity. Everything is really over to the west of us, closer to where the actual next frontal boundary will be, because once again, that second frontal boundary is going to be driving all of our rain chances this weekend. The first one will have dissipated by then, but the other one was about a state or two behind. So it will take its time in making its way into the deep south and the southeast. So Friday at 10 p.m., still looking like most activity will fizzle out, but some showers will remain over to the west. I guess I didn't throw a pause point on here, so let's take it over to your Saturday morning. Still a possibility of maybe seeing some scattered light showers and such. It may be in central Georgia, it may be over to the northeast of us like this model run shows, but it does look like we do see some more organization, and the front actually starts to push a little bit closer by the time we get to Saturday. And Saturday is shaping up to be a pretty messy afternoon. So before I even show you and go into the details about what specifically is going on, I would definitely recommend having a contingency plan to where you can move any outdoor plans indoors if the weather is to get kind of messy for anything planned on Saturday afternoon. Also, be sure you have your rain gear ready. This isn't going to be a slam dunk forecast. I'm not forecasting rain for all of central Georgia. Still going to be pretty scattered in nature, but Saturday is going to have the best coverage of the next couple of days. So activity continuing to flare up, but still be fairly scattered into the late afternoon and evening hours. And we see this secondary line, which is actually going to be the frontal boundary itself, pushing in as we go into the nighttime hours on Saturday. And this is pretty fortunate timing if we can get it to go along with this, because this will be past sunset and there will be a weakening trend as that line does push through from the west. And still going to see our fair share of overnight showers and hear a couple of low-end thunderstorms going into the overnight hours on Sunday at 3 a.m., which is as far as Future View does go right now. And I know this didn't look too impressive, but it has looked fairly impressive in past model runs all morning long. This is just what one individual model run is saying. By the time Ben comes in this afternoon, we could see the activity flare back up once again. So I'm not really changing any of my percentages, and we are still in a severe weather outlook for Saturday, which I will in fact get to as of now. We're going to start out with the day one storm outlook, just showing you the widespread impacts that, number one, this first frontal boundary is going to have Cleveland all the way through the deep south, states like Tennessee, Alabama, over into Mississippi, and then back as far westward as Oklahoma City and Texas are all in a level 2, and areas just outside of that are in a level 1, which does include the northern portion of the state of Georgia, and along with that, the metro Atlanta area. So we can see some active weather mainly to the north of us today. It looks like just due to the shape of this frontal boundary, we're not going to really get any implications with this first frontal boundary, and then it will dissipate and it won't pose any more severe weather risk. However, the secondary boundary will start to kick into gear. Those are going to be the potential threats with any of those strong to severe storms that may happen. The secondary boundary will kick into gear starting tomorrow, and that's where a level 1, once again, does still exist for almost the same areas, including the north and northwest portions of the state of Georgia, a level 2 back into central Texas. But it does look like that secondary boundary will continue to push through, and it's going to have kind of the same effects as the first one will later on this afternoon. But you still don't find central Georgia in any kind of severe weather outlook. Just because we're not in one for Friday here on the day 2 outlook doesn't mean that we can't see a strong thunderstorm or even a severe thunderstorm pop up later tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. I think the confidence is a lot less in it happening Friday as opposed to Saturday, but it's something that you'll just want to keep an eye on for any plans that you have with your friends and family going out on your Friday evening into your Friday night. But then we do find ourselves in one of these level 1 risk on the day 3 outlook. So this is going to be for Saturday, basically the entire state of Georgia, not even just us here in central Georgia, in areas up to the northeast, South Carolina, North Carolina, up into Virginia, eastern Tennessee. We all find ourselves in this level 1 out of 5 risk. So once again, this is the lowest out of the 5 levels that we can see, but we can see our fair share of strong weather pop up in these level 1 risks. So as long as you're in a risk, you are in a risk for seeing some form of severe weather. And Saturday, I would have more confidence in seeing a stronger or a severe thunderstorm as opposed to Friday, but not throwing it out of the realm of possibility, just given the time of year we're in, the stretch where we've seen active weather pop up in areas that aren't necessarily outlined in these outlooks. So the weather does not obey these boundaries that we do give them. It doesn't say, oh, there's only a level 1. Well, I can't strengthen into a storm that's going to do much damage, not too strong of a severe thunderstorm. Yes, they can flare up if they are in the right and suitable environment, and you are under a risk of severe weather, so it's best to be cautious, and it's best to prepare for the worst, but always be hopeful for the best. So long-range future view, I have a couple pause points on here. Let's drag it to the very beginning because that's when we're going into your Sunday morning hours. I have a 10% chance of some rain sticking around on Sunday morning. However, it's only one individual model run, the European model, that is trying to hint at some shades of blue still lingering, maybe in the vicinity of central Georgia. Once we take a look at this on short-range future view, as of this time tomorrow, we'll get a better idea of what your rain chance will be for Sunday. But it is looking a whole lot less impressive than what we have in store for Friday and Saturday. And then as we go throughout your Sunday afternoon, it looks like most of the rain is towards the east of us, off in the Atlantic, maybe just to the south of us. We'll continue to see if we have the possibility of seeing some scattered showers or just some sprinkles, maybe even a thunderstorm or two on Sunday. But I do believe it's going to be mostly rain as it currently stands Sunday. That's going to be the best day this weekend for any plans that you do have. Monday, we continue to see all this moisture lingering just to the east and northeast of us. Still not much coming to fruition in central Georgia. And then all of that does kind of get out of here, kind of moves up the Atlantic coast. More systems are trying to form over to the west by Tuesday, but still just on and off cloud cover in central Georgia. And this goes all the way to Wednesday and Thursday, where things are definitely very uncertain right now, but it does look like we are continuing to stay dry even into the midweek and into the later portion of the work week next week. So the good thing is we will see this front actually move through, not stall around us, not get really close to us, and then kind of set us in that summertime pattern that we've been referring to as of the last 2 weeks. We will see this sweep through, and after the passage of a cold front, we see cooler and drier air filter in. But now that we're in a warmer time of the year, we're not going to see as cool of air. We're not going to see as much dry air really filter in. We will see a slight downtick in it though, and it's probably going to make a world of difference. It already does look like a world of difference for your afternoon highs. Still mid to upper 80s for today and tomorrow, And then a little bit cooler on Saturday because the rain will probably start to sprout before we get into the warmest portion of the day, so only a high of 82 degrees. And then upper 70s for Sunday and Monday, already seeing that slightly cooler air make its presence known. And 78 is not too far not a far cry at all from 82, 85, 87 whatsoever. But it will feel a little more bearable if it has been too warm for you. And it's the first time in a good stretch that we really have fallen below average this time of year. And we're actually going to hover closer to the 80-degree mark as opposed to the 90-degree mark, which we have been doing very recently. How about your morning lows? This is something I want to turn your attention to as well, because if you wake up early in the mornings during that coolest portion of the morning, right there around sunrise, you're probably going to notice the difference. We've been stuck in the upper 50s, the low 60s for the last couple of weeks, and we will see a steady decline after Friday in those morning low temperatures. 59, 56 for Saturday and Sunday. Not going to really have an influence on how it feels if you're heading out to church or heading out the door early on Saturday. Still going to be above average for this time of year, but then down around 50 degrees. And I wouldn't throw it out of the realm of possibility that some areas could see some upper 40s to maybe start on Monday, and that will continue for Tuesday morning and even Wednesday morning. So these temperatures, they don't seem too chilly, but it's all relative to what you have been feeling. We've been stuck in the stretch of pleasant feeling mornings with temperatures near 60 degrees. So temperatures near 50 degrees is definitely going to be a noticeable difference. Just think of it as one last opportunity to grab that favorite quarter zip out of the closet before it is really time to put it away for good as we enter the summer months of the year. So here's how your 7-day forecast plays out. First day of May today, just really continuing with this pleasant and wonderful weather stretch. Not much change between today and the last couple of days, besides the fact that we can see some overnight showers that may have implications for you if you get up on the same alarm clock that I do around 2 or 3 a.m., maybe having to drive through a couple of isolated showers. Still not going to be too pesky whatsoever. Friday and Saturday. You'll notice that I have the thunderstorm icons on them. I'm not throwing it out of the realm of possibility and not buying in to what one run of Future View does say. But I do agree that Saturday is going to have better coverage of seeing some active weather as opposed to Friday. And the good news is we could use the rain. Like I showed you, we're trying to get back up to that average mark where we should be this time of year. In thunderstorms, while obviously you would rather just get your heavy rainfall showers as opposed to dealing with stuff and the implications and the damaging impacts that thunderstorms can have, they do have heavy pockets of rain, and over the course of about 30 minutes or so, they can dump their fair share of rain on some areas like Taylor County saw last week, like Central Bibb County did see last week. So that will be good. They will be bringing us the rain, and it does look like fairly good coverage of it in central Georgia. So Saturday, definitely the day that you really want to be on the lookout, but also don't take your guard down for Friday evening into the nighttime hours as well. You see these boxes go down, those high temperatures down into the upper 70s. I know, really cool. Those still going to be very warm weather, but we're getting into the time of year where a noticeable drop of maybe about 6 to 8 degrees on the temperature side of things is actually going to be fairly substantial as opposed to what we saw in the winter. We'd see those temperatures warm up to the 60s, the 70s for highs. You get a cold front to come through and you're knocked back down into the 40s or even the 30s some days. But 10% chance of rain still exists on Sunday. Overall, I think most areas will probably remain mostly cloudy to partly cloudy. And then that's the story as we go into the first full work week of May. Cinco de Mayo on Monday, going to be absolutely splendid weather. Definitely would advise making plans to go out to eat with friends and family because the weather not going to be an excuse to not make any plans. Going into Tuesday and Wednesday, we start to see a slight warming trend starting out around 50 degrees Monday and Tuesday, and still in the lower 50s for your Wednesday, but we will see those temperatures tick up as we go into the weekend, and that will continue as long as we don't see any other weather systems impacting our forecast into your Thursday and eventually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as we move into next week. So that's where your 7-day does stand as of right now. Keep your eye out on Friday and Saturday. Like I said, have a contingency plan to maybe move any outdoor plans indoors, especially throughout Saturday afternoon and your Friday evening plans, but also keep that rain gear on standby. Have that raincoat, bring that umbrella anytime you are venturing out of the house for Friday and Saturday. Not telling you to go cancel any plans, but you know what to do if the weather does get messy. It's not something you want to be outside for, so just be cautious. And this is still going to be fairly scattered, not seeing a lot of organization besides the driving force with it. So you may get your fair share of rain. You may only get some light showers. You may get no rain at all. There's still a chance that you don't get any rain each and every day, but hopefully everyone can get some form of rain to try to alleviate the slightly dry conditions that we have. And of course, put us back closer to average for this time of year where we should be in terms of rainfall. So thank you for tuning in for your extended forecast. We'll be back here tomorrow at 10:30 going over your specific forecast for the weekend, going over your event forecast for any plans that you have in Central Georgia this weekend, and taking a look at some of the stuff we've been working on here on the weather team, along with going into your very extended forecast past your 7-day, talking about those precip and temperature outlooks as we get well into the month of May, talking about mid-May already, which is still so hard to believe. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you have a terrific Thursday, Central Georgia.